you're one of the most effective people in the world at attacking the left. And sometimes it can slip into attacking the group. Do you worry that that's the same kind of oversimplification that Ye is doing about Jewish people that you can sometimes do with the left as a group?
So when I speak about the left, I'm speaking about a philosophy. I'm not really speaking about individual human beings as the leftists like group and then try to name who the members of this individual group are. I also make a distinction between the left and liberals. There are a lot of people who are liberal who disagree with me on taxes, disagree with me on foreign policy, disagree with me on a lot of things. The people who I'm talking about generally, when I talk about the left in the United States, are people who believe that alternative points of view ought to be silenced because they are damaging and harmful simply based on the disagreement. So that's one distinction. The second distinction, again, is when I talk about the right versus the left, typically I'm talking about a battle of competing philosophies. And so I'm not speaking about typically, it would be hard to, if you put a person in front of me and said, is this person of the left or of the right? Having just met them, I wouldn't be able to label them in the same way that if you met somebody in the name of Greenstein, you'd immediately got Jew. Or you met a black person, black person. And the adherence to a philosophy makes you a member of a group. If I think the philosophy is bad, that doesn't necessarily mean that you as a person are bad, but it does mean that I think your philosophy is bad.
Yeah, so the grouping is based on the philosophy versus something like a race, like the color of your skin, or race is in the case of the Jewish people. So it's a different thing. You can be a little bit more nonchalant and careless in attacking a group because it's ultimately attacking a set of ideas.
Well,
right?
I mean, it's really nonchalant in attacking the set of ideas, and I don't know that nonchalant would be the way I'd put it. I try to be exact when you don't always hit, but if I say that I oppose the communists, right, and then presumably I'm speaking of people who believe in the communist philosophy. Now, the question is whether I'm mislabeling, right? Whether I'm taking somebody who's not actually a communist and then shoving them in that group of communists, right? That would be inaccurate.
The dangerous thing is it expands the group, as opposed to you're talking about the philosophy. You're throwing everybody who's ever said, I'm curious about communism, I'm curious about socialism. Because there's like a gradient. It's like to throw something at you. I think Joe Biden said MAGA Republicans, right?
Right.
I think that's a very careless statement because the thing you jump to immediately is like all
everyone
Republicans
who voted for Trump.
For Trump.
Right.
Versus, I think, in the charitable interpretation, that means a set of ideas. Right?
Yeah, my actually problem with the MAGA Republicans line from Biden is that he went on in the speech that he made in front of Independence Hall to actually try and define what it meant to be a MAGA Republican who was a threat to the Republic, was the kind of language that he was using. And later on in the speech, he actually suggested, well, there are moderate Republicans, and the moderate Republicans are people who agree with me on like the Inflation Reduction Act. It's like, well, that can't be the dividing line between a MAGA Republican and a moderate Republican, somebody who agrees with you. You got to name me like a Republican who disagrees with you fairly strenuously, but is not in this group of threats to the Republic. You make that distinction, and we can have a fair discussion about whether the idea of election denial, for example, makes somebody, a threat to institutions. That's a conversation that we can have, and then we'll have to discuss how much power they have, what the actual perspective is, delve into it. But I think that he was being overbroad and sort of labeling all of his political enemies under one rubric. Now, again, in politics, this stuff sort of happens all the time. I'm not going to plead clean hands here because I'm sure that I've been inexact. But what would be good in that particular situation is for somebody to sort of read me back the quote, and I'll let you know where I've been inaccurate. I'll try to do that.
And also, you don't shy away from humor and occasional trolling and mockery and all that kind of stuff for the fun, for the chaos, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I try not to do trollery for trollery's sake, but if the show's not entertaining and not fun, people aren't going to listen. Right. And so, if you can't have fun with politics, the truth about politics is we all take it very seriously because it has some serious ramifications. Politics is Veep; it is not House of Cards. The general rule of politics is that everyone is a moron unless proven otherwise. That virtually everything is done out of stupidity rather than malice. And that if you actually watch politics as a comedy, you'll have a lot more fun. And so the difficulty for me is I take politics seriously, but also I have the ability to sort of flip the switch and suddenly it all becomes incredibly funny. Because it really is. Like if you just watch it from a pure entertainment perspective and you put aside the fact that it affects hundreds of millions of people, then watching, President Trump being president, I mean, he's one of the funniest humans who's ever lived. Watching Kamala Harris be Kamala Harris and talking about how much he loves Venn diagrams or electric buses. I mean, that's funny stuff. So if I can't make fun of that, then my job becomes pretty morose pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's funny to figure out what is the perfect balance between seeing the humor and the absurdity of the game of it versus taking it seriously enough because it does affect hundreds of millions of people. It's a weird balance to strike. It's like I am afraid with the internet that everything becomes a joke.
I totally agree with this. I will say this. I try to make less jokes about the ideas and more jokes about the people in the same way that I make jokes about myself. I'm pretty self-effacing in terms of my humor. I would say at least half the jokes on my show are about me. Right? When I'm reading ads for Tommy John and they're talking about their no wedgie guarantee, I'll say things like, that would help me in high school because it would have. I mean, just factually speaking. So if I can speak that way about myself, I feel like everybody else can take it as well.